Hi, I'm going to show you in some depth how to set up a dado blade on a table saw. And as a little added extra for those of you who own Sawstop table saws, like this particular table saw, I will also go through the extra steps needed on a Sawstop to change out the cartridge. Those of you who are not familiar with, well, before we get started, if you like what you see here, like the content, then I'd ask that you would subscribe, and then you'll be notified of future videos that we put out along this line. And also, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button at the end if you like it, and that'll get the word out to a lot more people that it's a good video. So, for those of you who don't own a Sawstop, the technology for Sawstop, there's a cartridge under here, which you'll see in a little bit, that if your finger touches this blade, or if metal touches this blade, the cartridge will grab the blade, stop its rotation, and pull it down under the top surface of the saw. And when you change from a regular configuration to a dado blade configuration, you have to have a different cartridge. So one of the steps here will be to change the cartridge. Those of you who don't own a Sawstop, the rest of this video applies equally to you. You just don't have to do the cartridge change out. So let's get started. First of all, we need to remove the regular throat plate, and we need to remove this splitter. And we have to take the existing blade off, which requires me to use these wrenches to loosen that nut. Pull it off by hand. Most difficult part of this whole operation is not dropping this nut down into the guts of the saw. You don't want to do that. Pull that washer off, and then wiggle the blade and remove the blade. I'll just set that over here. So now I'm going to remove the cartridge. The cartridge is this piece of equipment down here, and I will show you the dado cartridge here that I'm going to replace it with. This is what the cartridges look like. Now down inside here there is a red handled lock mechanism. You can see it here. You turn it 90 degrees and pull it out. And then using both hands you have to wiggle this cartridge to take it off. So out comes the cartridge. There is the regular cartridge, and here is the cartridge for dado. And you can see that it's wider here and bigger. So now we just reverse those steps to put that cartridge on. This can be a little tricky because you have to line up against two circular pins, and then you simply push it in. So you see I lined up with a pin up here on top and a pin down below, and then I just push it up against this surface. Again, I take this locking pin and it goes in a hole in the back part of the cartridge, and it'll only go in one way, and then you turn it 90 degrees counterclockwise to lock the cartridge in place. Now you have to change the orientation of the cartridge to the blade using this Allen wrench and this adjustment here. And the reason is because there's a slight geometry difference between the orientation of the cartridge and a dado blade and the cartridge and a regular blade. So I'm turning this counterclockwise to move this cartridge further away from the blade. Now let's start getting our dado blades set up. It has a dado set such as that this has a main blade on the left side and then it has some chipper blades, and then it has another main blade on the right side. So this is the left side one, and I'll put it on. This one is the right side one. I'm just going to set that aside because that goes all the way over on the right. This is one of the chipper blades. And as you can see, there are 4 arms on it, and it has a carbide tipped blade end. So we put that on all the way against the left side blade, and then we orient it so that this gap lines up with the teeth on that outside blade. Now we'll get another one of those chippers. By the way, you have to be very careful that you get it oriented correctly and not backwards, because it will not be cutting if it's backwards. So the carbide tip has to be pointing toward you. So here we put another one on, and then we rotate it so that it is, again, not up against, not right oriented with these chipper blades, but separate from that, but still in between here. And then we'll put a third one on here. I'm not going to build the entire Dado set. We could do a 3/4 inch wide one, but we'll do a little less than that just for brevity. So there I've put a third one on, and so I've oriented that one offset from these. So you notice no 2 of these are right next to each other. After I get that blade in place, chipper in place, then I take the right blade, and again, being careful of the orientation, that the carbide tip is pointing toward me, and then I put it in and I orient it so that it is not right next to the blade on the chipper that's right up here against it. So there I have my sandwich of 3 chippers and the left and right blades in place. So that's a total of 5 blades that I've put onto the arbor of the table saw. Now I'll put this washer on and the nut. Whoops, I almost dropped it, which would extend this video quite a bit. So you've got to get that started without changing the orientation of those blades relative to one another. And then I tighten the arbor nut. And now the blade is in place. So we've put the blade in place. Now for you Sawstop users, you have to check with this plastic feeler gauge provided with the saw. You have to check the distance between the teeth of the blade and the edge of this cartridge, because it's got to be oriented correctly, and it is. It's like a feeler gauge, only it's made out of plastic, and it's at the intersection of the blade and the face of the cartridge. So that's taken care of. We do not need a chip breaker back here because we're doing Dados, and so we'll just put this lever down and we will put this back on and get all of this paraphernalia off the top of the table saw for safety reasons, and we're done. So again, for those of you who have a Sawstop, you've seen how to take that cartridge out and change it with the other cartridge. For the rest of you, just skip that step, and we've shown you how to orient these blades, put them on, and adjust them. If you like what you see, please hit like and also subscribe to our videos so you'll be notified of future videos.